23 years of loyalty got me a pink slip and no coffee. 7 days later, $15 million hit my account. I drove home with cake to tell my wife. Found her naked with my boss in our bed. They smiled like they'd won. Fools. I owned the ground they were standing on. My name is Donald Chambers. Don to everyone who knows me. I'm 51 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I was lead infrastructure engineer at Cloud Sync Systems, one of the top cloud service providers in the Midwest. I built their entire back-end architecture, designed redundancy protocols that saved them millions in downtime. I knew every server, every node, every failsafe like they were my own children. Then came that Tuesday morning in October. I walked into the main conference room, thinking it was another strategy meeting. Instead, I found 3 executives sitting there with faces carved from stone. No coffee offered, no small talk. Just my boss, Gerald, and 2 HR representatives I'd only seen at company picnics. Gerald cleared his throat. Don, we're restructuring the engineering division. The company's moving to a more automated infrastructure model with offshore support. I remember the fluorescent lights humming above us, that flat corporate buzz that suddenly sounded deafening. After 23 years, I asked. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. We appreciate everything you've built here, one of the HR women said, sliding a folder across the table. Your severance package reflects that. I opened it. 3 months salary. For 23 years of my life, they were offering me 3 months. I didn't argue, didn't plead. I just stood up, walked out of that room, and drove home at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, something I hadn't done since Wyatt was born 25 years ago. Janet's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. Our daughter Heather's wasn't. Thank God. She was probably at work, crunching numbers at Palmer Manufacturing, where she'd landed her first real accounting job right out of college. Funny how proud I'd been when she got that position. Philip Garrett himself had called to congratulate us, said he'd keep an eye on her career. Philip, our friend of 15 years. Philip, the CFO who played golf with me every other Saturday. I walked into our house in Bloomfield Hills, the one I'd mortgaged my soul to afford because Janet wanted the right neighborhood, the right schools, the right image. She was in the living room, wine glass in hand at 2:30 in the afternoon, scrolling through her tablet. Don. She looked up, startled. Why are you home? They let me go, I said flatly. She blinked once, twice, then took a sip of wine. Well, I guess that's that then. No hug, no concern, no are you okay? Just an acceptance, so casual it felt rehearsed. That's all you have to say? I asked. Janet set down her glass with deliberate care. Don, you've been coasting for years. Maybe this is the push you needed to actually do something with that old software you're always tinkering with in the garage. The dismissiveness in her voice hit harder than the firing had. I turned and walked to the garage without another word, pulled out the old storage bin I kept in the back corner, and lifted the lid. Inside sat 3 years' worth of architectural designs, code repositories on external drives, and documentation for a cloud management system I'd started building before Cloud Sync even existed. They'd rejected it back then, said it was too ambitious, too specialized. But sitting there in my garage, unemployed at 51, I realized something. The world had finally caught up to what I designed a decade ago, and nobody knew it existed except me. That night, Janet went out to dinner with colleagues from the office. She didn't invite me, didn't ask if I wanted company. She just left me, sitting in the house we'd shared for 26 years, alone with my thoughts and a future that suddenly looked nothing like the past. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal day of my old life. Everything after that Tuesday would be different. Some of it would be devastating. But most of it would be exactly the reckoning everyone who'd underestimated me deserved. The garage became my sanctuary. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, make coffee strong enough to strip paint, and disappear into that cluttered space before Janet even stirred. She didn't ask what I was doing out there, didn't seem to care. She'd leave for Palmer Manufacturing around 7:30, come home after 6, and we'd orbit around each other like distant planets, cold and separate. 3 days after the firing, I had the prototype running on my old server stack. The system I designed back in 2014 was called CloudForge, a management platform that could automate infrastructure deployment across multiple cloud providers simultaneously. Back then, companies were still figuring out single cloud strategies. Now, every mid-sized business was drowning in multi-cloud complexity, paying consultants 6 figures to duct tape solutions together. My design solved that problem elegantly. It was modular, scalable, and built on architecture principles that were a decade ahead of their time. I'd written the core in my spare time, tested it on small networks, documented every line of code. CloudSync had reviewed it in 2015 and rejected it as too niche for current market needs. I spent 2 16-hour days modernizing the interface, updating the security protocols, and stress testing the deployment algorithms. By Friday, I had something that wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I barely recognized. The voice on the other end was rough, tired, desperate. Don Chambers? This is Trevor Dalton. We worked together at DataStream back in the 90s. Trevor. Yeah, I remembered him. Brilliant systems architect, terrible people skills. Left DataStream to start his own consulting firm. We'd lost touch around 2005. What can I do for you, Trevor? I asked, walking out to the driveway for better reception. I'm in trouble, Trevor said bluntly. Deep trouble. I took over a cloud integration firm 2 years ago. Promised clients we could deliver seamless multi-cloud management. We can't. Our back end is a disaster, held together with third-party services that hate each other. I've got 17 contracts about to walk, and if they do, I'm bankrupt by Christmas. I leaned against my truck, watching autumn leaves skitter across the driveway. Why are you calling me? Because 15 years ago, you showed me a prototype for something called CloudForge, Trevor said. You said it could manage deployments across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud simultaneously. Everyone laughed at you, said nobody would ever need that. Don, everybody needs that now. Do you still have it? I looked back at the garage, at the dim light filtering through the dusty window. I might. I'll pay you whatever you want, Trevor said. His voice fractured with emotion. Consulting fees, licensing, partnership, I don't care. I just need something that works, and I need it yesterday. Send me your architecture documentation, I said calmly. Give me 48 hours. Don, I thank you. Seriously, thank you. I hung up and stood there for a moment, feeling something I hadn't felt since that Tuesday morning. Purpose. Direction. The sharp clarity that comes when you realize the thing everyone dismissed might be exactly what the world finally needs. Inside the house, Janet was on the phone, laughing about something. Through the window, I could see her pacing the kitchen, wine glass already in hand, though it wasn't even 5 o'clock. I didn't go inside. I went back to the garage, fired up my workstation, and got to work. Trevor's documentation arrived 20 minutes later. I opened it, compared it to my CloudForge architecture, and smiled. 85% compatibility. His $12 million problem was a puzzle piece missing from my decade-old design. All I had to do was fill in the gaps, and I just saved a dying company. Or more accurately, I just bought myself a ticket back into the game everyone thought I'd left for good. Trevor's architecture documentation read like a crime scene report. Overlapping API calls, redundant authentication layers, bandwidth choking on inefficient data routing. I'd seen cleaner code written by first-year students. No wonder his clients were threatening to walk. I worked through the night, mapping CloudForge core modules against his infrastructure gaps. By Wednesday morning, I had a functional integration ready. Not perfect, but stable enough to demonstrate capability. I uploaded it to a secure sandbox environment and sent Trevor the access credentials. He called me 4 hours later. His voice sounded different, lighter, almost giddy. Don, I just ran a live demo for Vanguard Logistics, Trevor said. I could hear him pacing, breathless with excitement. They've been threatening to drop us for 6 months. I showed them your system deploying their entire infrastructure across 3 cloud providers in under 8 minutes. 8 minutes, Don. Their current process takes 3 days and costs them $40,000 every time. And I kept my voice neutral, though my pulse quickened. They signed a 3-year extension on the spot, Trevor said. Not just that, they want to triple their deployment volume. Don, this thing you built, it's not just good. It's exactly what the market's been screaming for. I leaned back in my garage chair, looking at the dusty rafters overhead. How many lapsed contracts are you holding? 14 that are salvageable. Maybe 3 more if I can move fast enough. Then here's what we do, I said, and laid out the terms. $15 million. $5 million upfront for exclusive licensing rights. $5 million in back-end royalties tied to client deployments, and $5 million in acquisition options if he hit quarterly performance targets. I'd retain ownership of the core IP and could license to non-competing markets. Trevor didn't hesitate. Send me the contract. I drafted it myself that night, kept the language tight and clean. My old law school buddy Raymond Blackwell reviewed it the next morning, made 3 minor adjustments, and by Friday afternoon, we had signatures on digital paper. $5 million hit my new business account 72 hours later. 1 week. 7 days from unemployed and discarded to holding more money than I'd made in 23 years at CloudSync. I didn't tell Janet. She was busy anyway, working late every night that week. Thursday, she came home at 9:30, said she'd been helping Philip prepare for board presentations. Friday, she didn't come home until after 11. I was in the garage when I heard her car pull in, watched through the grimy window as she stepped out, checked her phone, and smiled at something on the screen. She looked younger somehow, lighter. Happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. That Saturday, I stopped at a bakery in Birmingham, bought an almond chocolate torte, her favorite since our dating days. Thought maybe I'd tell her about the deal, share something good after the nightmare of the past 2 weeks. It was a stupid impulse. Naive. But part of me still wanted to believe we were in this together. I learned soon enough how wrong I was. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway around 2 in the afternoon. Janet's Lexus was there, and so was Philip's BMW. That wasn't unusual. They'd worked together for years. Sometimes he stopped by to drop off documents or discuss strategy. But something felt off about it that day, a wrongness I couldn't name. I carried the bakery box inside, set it carefully on the kitchen counter. Janet, you home? Silence. Then a sound from upstairs, faint but distinct. Movement, and a low voice that definitely wasn't my wife's. My feet moved on autopilot, carrying me up the stairs while my brain tried to construct innocent explanations. They were reviewing financial reports, going over presentations, discussing Heather's career trajectory. The bedroom door was barely open, just a sliver of light cutting into the dim hallway. Through that gap, I saw enough. Janet was in our bed, sheet pulled across her chest, but not high enough to hide the obvious. Philip sat next to her, shirtless, his expensive watch catching the afternoon light. They were laughing about something, intimate and easy, like they'd done this 100 times before. Philip saw me first. His face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession: satisfaction, recognition, panic. I pushed the door open all the way, stood there for 5 full seconds. Neither of them said anything. What could they say? Dawn, Janet started, pulling the sheet higher. I turned without a word, walked back downstairs with footsteps that made no sound on the hardwood. Behind me, I heard frantic rustling, Janet calling my name, but I kept moving. Grabbed the tour box off the counter, walked out the front door, got in my truck. Janet appeared on the porch in a robe, hair disheveled, face pale. Dawn, please, we need to talk about this. I looked at her through the truck window. This woman I'd been married to for 26 years. This stranger who just destroyed everything I thought I knew. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. Then I backed out of the driveway, leaving her standing there with whatever excuses she'd prepared. I drove to a storage facility in Pontiac, rented a unit, and started making calls. By evening, I had a short-term rental lined up in Royal Oak, a lawyer on retainer, and a forensic accountant scheduled for Monday morning. The torch sat on my truck's passenger seat the whole time, perfect and untouched. Around midnight, I threw it in a dumpster behind a gas station and headed to my new temporary home. 1 week ago, I'd lost everything. Now I'd gained $15 million and lost a marriage. But here's what Janet and Philip didn't understand yet. I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the engineer, and I just started building their destruction, one careful calculation at a time. The rental in Royal Oak was small but functional. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and most importantly, a second room I converted into an office. I moved in on a Sunday, spent Monday setting up servers and secure networks, and by Tuesday, I was operational. My lawyer, Raymond Blackwell, called that afternoon with news. Don, I pulled the financial records like you asked. Your joint accounts, the house deed, investment portfolios. There are some interesting discrepancies. Talk to me, I said, opening my laptop. Janet increased your life insurance policy 8 months ago, Raymond said carefully. Bumped it from $500,000 to $3 million. She's the sole beneficiary. I stopped typing. I didn't authorize that. Your signature's on file with the insurance company. Digital authorization through your joint account portal. I'm sending you the timestamp data now. The email arrived seconds later. I opened the document, scanned the metadata. The authorization had been submitted at 2:15 on a Thursday afternoon in February. I checked my calendar from that date. I'd been in a 4-hour infrastructure review meeting at CloudSync. No access to personal accounts. She forged it, I said quietly. That's a strong word without more evidence, Raymond cautioned. But it's worth investigating. Don, have you checked your other accounts? Investment portfolios, retirement funds. I spent the next hour digging through financial records with Raymond on speakerphone. What we found made my blood run cold. 3 investment accounts that had been in my name were now managed through a proxy firm called Silver Point Capital. The paperwork showed my authorization, but I'd never heard of Silver Point Capital. Raymond did a corporate search. Silver Point is a Delaware holding company. Registered 8 months ago. The managing partner is... He paused. Philip Garrett. I sat back, the pieces falling into place. 8 months. That's when Janet had started working late. When Philip had suddenly become a fixture at our house. Always with work excuses. Always charming and friendly. They've been planning this, I said. The affair, the insurance policy, moving assets. How long before they decided an accident would be more convenient than a divorce? Don, that's speculation, Raymond warned. But we need to document everything. I'm recommending you hire a forensic accountant and a private investigator. Today, I made both calls before the hour was out. The forensic accountant, a sharp woman named Teresa Flynn, agreed to start immediately. The private investigator was a former FBI agent named Jack Reeves. He'd been retired 5 years, but still had connections and a reputation for thoroughness. Jack started surveillance on Janet and Philip that evening. Teresa began untangling the financial web the next morning. Meanwhile, I started my own project. I created a new company, registered in Nevada, with layers of LLC protection. Called it Infracore Solutions. Quiet, unremarkable, impossible to trace back to me without serious digging. Then I started purchasing dormant technology companies that held expired patents in cloud infrastructure, patents that overlapped with systems Palmer Manufacturing used for their financial modeling software. The same software Philip had helped implement 3 years ago, back when I consulted on their IT infrastructure as a favor to Janet. By Friday, I owned 4 shell companies with legal claims to technology Philip's division relied on daily. I filed compliance requests with their vendors, triggered automatic reviews that would take weeks to resolve. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just small cracks in the foundation, invisible until the weight above became too much to bear. Heather called on Saturday morning. I was in the office turn command center, reviewing surveillance reports Jack had sent overnight, when my phone lit up with her name. Dad. Her voice was tight, worried. Where are you? Mom said he moved out. I closed my laptop carefully. I'm in Royal Oak. Temporary place while I figure some things out. Because of the job? Heather asked. Dad, I'm so sorry. Philip told me what happened at CloudSync. He said the board made terrible decisions, and you deserve better. Philip told her. Of course he did. Playing the concerned family friend, while sleeping with her mother. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart, I said, choosing words carefully. Did your mom tell you why I moved out? Silence. Then, hesitantly, she said you were having trouble adjusting to unemployment, that you needed space to process things. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. That's one version. Dad, what's going on? Heather's voice sharpened. You're scaring me. I wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to unload the whole sordid truth about her mother and Philip. But she worked under Philip's authority, saw him every day. If I told her now, before everything was in place, it would complicate things in ways I couldn't control. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? I asked instead. There are some things we need to discuss in person. I'm working a half day tomorrow, budget review, Heather said. But I can meet you around 2. Perfect. There's a cafe in Birmingham, corner of Maple and Old Woodward. You know it. Yeah, I know it. Dad, you're really okay, right? I looked around my sparse apartment, at the servers humming in the corner, at the files spread across every surface. I'm better than okay, Heather. I promise. See you tomorrow. After I hung up, I pulled up the surveillance photos Jack had sent. Janet and Philip having lunch at a downtown restaurant, holding hands across the table. Janet and Philip entering a hotel in Troy at 3 in the afternoon. Philip's car parked in our driveway, my driveway, overnight on Thursday. I saved the photos to an encrypted drive and started preparing the conversation I'd have with Heather tomorrow. My daughter deserved the truth, deserved to know who she was really working for. But more than that, I needed to know where she'd stand when everything came crashing down, because it was coming inevitable as gravity. And when it hit, I needed to know if my daughter would be standing beside me or trying to salvage a relationship with people who betrayed everything our family was supposed to mean. The coffee shop in Birmingham was nearly empty on Sunday afternoon. Heather arrived exactly on time, looking tired and confused. She'd always been punctual, organized, detail-oriented. She got that from me, not from her mother. "Dad," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look different." "Different how?" I asked, signaling the waitress. "I don't know. Sharper, maybe. More focused." She studied my face. "What's really going on?" I pulled out my tablet, opened a folder, and turned it toward her. The first photo showed Janet and Philip at a restaurant, hands clasped across the table. The second showed them entering a hotel. The third was time-stamped from 3 nights ago. Philip's BMW parked in our driveway at 11:30 at night. Heather stared at the screen, her face going pale. "When did you take these?" "I didn't. A private investigator did." "Heather, your mother and Philip have been having an affair for at least 8 months. That's why I moved out." She pushed the tablet away like it was contaminated. "No, Dad, no, that's not. Philip wouldn't do that. He's been mentoring me at work, helping me learn the financial systems." Her voice faltered as the implications hit her. "He's been using you," I said quietly. "Your cover, Heather." The concerned boss helping his friend's daughter. "It makes everything look innocent." "I'm gonna be sick," Heather whispered. I gave her a moment. Let her process. The waitress brought coffee neither of us had ordered, seemed to sense the tension, and disappeared quickly. "There's more," I said. "Philip and your mother have been moving money around. Life insurance policies I didn't authorize, investment accounts transferred to companies Philip controls." "Heather, I think they were planning something worse than divorce." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean a $3 million life insurance policy I supposedly signed for, except I was in meetings when the authorization went through. I mean investment portfolios suddenly managed by firms I've never heard of. I mean your mother asking detailed questions about my daily routines, where I drive, what roads I take home." Heather's hand trembled around her coffee cup. "You think they were going to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I think they were keeping options open," I said carefully. "But I documented everything, hired lawyers and accountants. They can't move now without me knowing." "What do I do?" Heather asked. "I work for Philip. I see him every day. How do I just act normal?" "You don't have to do anything," I told her. "In fact, it's better if you don't. Keep it at work. Keep being professional. Don't let them know you know. Can you do that?" She nodded slowly. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known." "You weren't supposed to know. That's how these things work." I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "But Heather, I need to ask you something important. When this all comes out, when the legal action starts and everything becomes public, where will you stand?" "With you," she said immediately. "Always with you, Dad. You're my father. Philip is just some guy I work for." She paused. "I'm going to start looking for another job tomorrow." "Good girl," I said. "But Heather, be careful. Don't do anything sudden that might alert them. Take your time, be strategic. And if you see anything suspicious at work, documents being destroyed, files being moved, you tell me immediately." "I will," she promised. After Heather left, I sat in that booth for another hour, watching through the window as autumn leaves scattered across the parking lot. My daughter was on my side. That was one piece in place. Now I just needed to talk to Wyatt in New Zealand and make sure both my children understood what was coming. Philip fell to first. Jack's surveillance reports showed him staying late at Palmer Manufacturing 3 nights in a row, reviewing documents, making phone calls that lasted well past midnight. On Wednesday, he had a heated argument with someone in the parking lot, gesturing angrily, clearly stressed. The compliance reviews I triggered were starting to bite. Palmer Manufacturing software vendors had flagged discrepancies in licensing agreements, systems that used architecture covered by patents my shell companies now owned. Nothing illegal yet, just questions that needed answers. Questions that required lawyers and audits, and time nobody wanted to spend. Janet noticed too. Jack caught her outside Philip's office on Thursday afternoon, their body language tense, worried. She'd stopped coming home to the house in Bloomfield Hills. According to property records I'd pulled, she was staying at Philip's condo in Troy. Good. That simplified things. Teresa Flynn, my forensic accountant, called Friday morning with an update. Don, I found something interesting in the Silver Point Capital documents. The company was established using seed money from Palmer Manufacturing's Executive Discretionary Fund. That's potentially a corporate governance violation if it wasn't properly disclosed. Can you document it? I asked. Already done. I've also traced 3 transfers from your joint accounts to Silver Point that Janet authorized without your knowledge. Those are prosecutable as fraud if you want to pursue it. Not yet, I said. Let's keep building the case. The more we have, the more leverage we have. That afternoon, I got a call from Wyatt in New Zealand. He'd been harder to reach than Heather, working on a research project in some remote part of the South Island with spotty cell service. Dad, I just got your messages, Wyatt said, his voice tinny and distant. All 10 of them. What's the emergency? I explained everything. The affair, the financial manipulation, the insurance policy, the investigation. Wyatt listened without interrupting, which had always been his way. Think first, react later. So basically, Mom tried to set you up, and now you're systematically destroying her and Philip's lives, Wyatt summarized when I finished. That's one way to put it, I admitted. Good, Wyatt said flatly. What do you need from me? Check your trust fund. Make sure nothing's been moved without authorization. I heard typing through the phone. Balance looks right. 92,000. Same as last time I checked 3 months ago. Why? Just making sure. Your mother had access to those accounts as co-trustee. Had. Wyatt caught the past tense. I removed her this week. You and Heather are the only authorized parties now. Smart. Wyatt paused. Dad, I've got another 4 months on this research contract, but if you need me to come home, stay there. I interrupted. Finish your work. This will still be ongoing when you get back. But Wyatt, I need you to know that your sister is standing with me on this. I needed to know where you stand too. Are you seriously asking me that? Wyatt's voice hardened. She cheated on you, tried to steal from you, maybe worse. You're my father. Of course I'm on your side. Something in my chest loosened. Both my children, solid and certain. That's all I needed. Thanks, son. That means everything. After we hung up, I pulled up the surveillance photos from that afternoon. Philip leaving Palmer Manufacturing at 4:30, unusual for a CFO on a Friday. Janet meeting him at a wine bar in Royal Oak, both of them looking strained. They talked for 90 minutes, their expressions growing more agitated as the conversation went on. They were starting to understand something was wrong, starting to feel the pressure from multiple directions. But they didn't know the source yet, didn't realize the man they discarded was the one tightening the noose. By Monday, they'd know more. By the end of the month, they'd know everything. And by then, it would be far too late to stop what I'd set in motion. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after I'd moved out. Philip's direct line, the one he'd given me years ago, for emergencies only. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Don, Philip's voice sounded strained tight. We need to talk. In person. About what? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. About whatever you're doing to Palmer Manufacturing's vendor contracts. About the compliance reviews that are costing us hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Don, I know it's you. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said calmly. I'm just a recently unemployed infrastructure engineer. What could I possibly do to a major manufacturing firm? Cut out, Philip snapped. The shell companies, the patent claims, the timing. It's too precise to be coincidence. What do you want? Money? I can arrange a settlement. Something fair for both of us. Both of us. I repeated slowly. That's interesting phrasing, Philip. Like we're partners in something. Silence on his end. Then, carefully, Don, I know you're angry about Janet. I understand that. But destroying my career won't fix your marriage. My marriage. I laughed, a cold sound. Philip, my marriage ended the day you decided sleeping with my wife was worth more than 20 years of friendship. But you're right about one thing. I am destroying something. Just not what you think. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should check the deed on the Bloomfield Hills property, I said. The house you've been staying at with my wife. Might want to verify who actually owns it. I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, Jack sent me a surveillance photo. Philip's standing in Janet's driveway, holding his phone, face pale as snow. Next to him, Janet, gesturing frantically, clearly trying to calm him down. They had just discovered what I'd known since the forensic audit began. The house wasn't in Janet's name. It had been transferred into a business trust back in 2016 during a property tax reassessment. The trust was owned 98% by a holding company, and that holding company's majority shareholder was listed as Donald J. Chambers. I'd convinced Janet it was a tax strategy, signed the documents in a stack of refinancing paperwork she'd barely glanced at. She'd been so focused on the monthly payment reduction, she never questioned the ownership structure. Now she and Philip were standing on property I could legally reclaim any time I chose. The next photo Jack sent showed Philip making frantic phone calls. The third showed a luxury sedan pulling up, a lawyer probably, given the expensive suit and briefcase. Teresa Flynn called an hour later. "Don, someone just tried to access the Silver Point Capital accounts. 3 failed login attempts from an IP address registered to Palmer Manufacturing. They're panicking." "Good," I said. "Let them panic. What's the status on the insurance policy investigation?" State Insurance Fraud Division opened an official inquiry yesterday. The digital signature analysis came back inconclusive, which is their polite way of saying it's forged. They're requesting full documentation from Janet and the insurance company. "Timeline?" I asked. 2 to 4 weeks for preliminary findings. If they determine fraud, criminal charges could follow. That afternoon, Heather called, her voice shaking. "Dad, Philip just fired me. No warning, no explanation. He called me into his office and said my position was being eliminated effective immediately. Security escorted me out like I'd stolen something." "Did he give any reason?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "He said the company was restructuring the accounting department." "But Dad," I saw the look in his eyes. "He knows I know something." He was scared. "Pack up anything from your apartment that matters," I told her. "I'm wiring you 3 months' salary tonight. Consider it severance from me, not him." "And Heather? This is about to get much worse before it gets better. Are you still with me?" "Always," she said without hesitation. That evening, I drove to Bloomfield Hills. Pulled up to the house at 7 o'clock, when I knew they'd both be there. Janet's car was in the driveway, and so was Philip's BMW. I didn't knock. Used my key, walked right in like I owned the place. Because legally I did. They were in the living room, surrounded by papers, a lawyer sitting across from them, looking grim. All 3 of them looked up when I entered. "Don," Janet started, her voice pleading. "We need to talk about the house. There's been some confusion about—" "No confusion," I interrupted. "The house is mine. Always has been. You've just been living in it courtesy of my generosity." I turned to Philip. "And you've been sleeping in another man's bed, in another man's house, with another man's wife. How does that feel, Philip? Knowing you never had anything of your own?" Philip stood up, his face flushing. "You can't just throw us out. There are laws, procedures." "Oh, I'm not throwing you out tonight," I said calmly. "That would be too easy. No, I'm giving you 30 days' notice. Legal, proper, documented. 30 days to find somewhere else to build your little fantasy." I pulled an envelope from my jacket, handed it to the lawyer. "Official eviction notice. You'll find everything in order." The lawyer scanned it quickly, then nodded reluctantly to Philip. "It's legitimate. The trust structure gives him full authority." Janet's face went from pale to gray. "Don, please. We can work this out. The house, the money, all of it. Just tell us what you want." "What I want?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd built a life with. "I want you to understand what you threw away. I want you to realize that while you were playing house with Philip, I was building an empire. I want you both to know that every move you made, I saw it coming. And I want you to live with the consequences." I walked out, leaving them in the ruins of their borrowed life. Behind me, I heard Philip's voice, rising in panic. "Oh my God, it's all gone. The accounts, the assets, everything. He's taken everything." I smiled as I got in my truck. "Not quite everything, Philip. Not yet. But soon." For months past, the house in Bloomfield Hills sold for $2.3 million, well above market value. I didn't keep it. Too many bad memories buried in those walls. I bought a smaller place in Northville instead, modern and clean, with a dedicated workshop where I could build things that mattered. CloudForge expanded beyond anything I'd imagined. Trevor's company landed 6 more major contracts, and my back-end royalties were generating $200,000 a month. I'd licensed the technology to 3 other firms, all non-competing markets, each one desperate for the infrastructure solution I designed a decade too early. Infracore Solutions, my shell company, absorbed 2 more dormant tech firms and became a legitimate player in the cloud architecture space. I hired a small team, mostly young engineers hungry to prove themselves, and we started developing next-generation protocols that made CloudForge look like basic arithmetic. Philip wasn't so fortunate. Palmer Manufacturing's board launched a full investigation after the compliance reviews uncovered licensing irregularities. They discovered the Silver Point Capital connection, the unauthorized use of corporate funds, and the conflict of interest with Janet. Philip was terminated in September. No severance, no references, just a quick exit and a non-disclosure agreement that kept the details quiet to protect the company's reputation. He tried to fight it, hired an expensive law firm, but the documentation Teresa and I had assembled was bulletproof. By October, he'd settled into a junior financial analyst position at a mid-tier consulting firm in Ohio. Quite a step down from CFO. Janet fared slightly better, but not much. She kept her position at Palmer Manufacturing briefly, but the whispers followed her everywhere. The woman who destroyed a CFO's career for an affair. The wife who'd betrayed a loyal husband. In corporate environments, reputation is currency, and hers was worthless. She resigned in November, citing personal reasons. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a small accounting firm in Ferndale. The insurance fraud investigation concluded with a finding of insufficient evidence to prosecute, but the policy was voided, and Janet was blacklisted by every major insurance carrier. The $3 million she counted on evaporated like morning fog. The divorce was finalized on a cold day in December. No alimony, given the infidelity documentation. Asset split was 65/35 in my favor, reflecting the hidden accounts and fraudulent transfers. Janet walked away with her retirement account, her car, and about $300,000. I walked away with everything else. Heather found a better position at a tech startup in Ann Arbor, heading their financial operations department. She and I had dinner every Sunday, rebuilding the relationship that Janet's betrayal had fractured. Wyatt came home for Christmas, brought his girlfriend from New Zealand. We spent the holiday in my new house, just the 3 of us and her, cooking dinner and watching old movies. No drama, no tension, just family. On New Year's Eve, I stood in my workshop, looking at the server racks humming quietly in the corner. CloudForge's heartbeat, steady and strong. I thought about that Tuesday in October when they'd fired me, when Janet had barely looked up from her wine, when I'd felt like my life was ending. They'd meant to break me. Instead, they'd freed me. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Happy New Year, partner. Q4 numbers just came in. We cleared $18 million in revenue. Your royalty check is in the mail." I smiled, typed back a quick thanks, and poured myself a bourbon. Outside, fireworks started going off somewhere in the neighborhood, bright bursts of color against the winter sky. I'd lost a job, a marriage, and a friend. But I'd gained something more valuable. Proof that the man they discarded was never weak, never finished, never even close to defeated. I was just getting started. And this year, I was going to build something that would make CloudForge look like a practice run. Happy New Year indeed.